This is a story of impossible survival. It's a story about ingenuity, about deep injustice, and really about the unbreakable will to live, all set on one of the most forgotten, desolate specks of land you can possibly imagine. So, let's talk about Tremelin Island. To be honest, it's barely a place at all. It's this tiny, flat, 200-acre sandbar that sits just 7 meters above sea level. I mean, think about that. Any big storm could just swallow it whole. The winds are so harsh, constantly blowing, that no trees can even grow there. All you've got is some grass and bushes. The only wildlife? Sea turtles, some birds, a few fish. Basically, it's uninhabitable. So you have to ask yourself, in a place this hostile, how could anyone possibly survive? I mean, lasting a few months would be a miracle. But what if I told you that over 260 years ago, a group of people got stranded right here? And they didn't just survive for a few months. They survived for 15 years. 15! So how on earth did they get there? And how, against every imaginable odd, did they manage to hold on for that long? Well, our story starts back in 1761. The world is caught up in the 7 Years' War between France and Britain, this huge global fight over colonies. And it's against this chaotic backdrop that a single ship makes a fateful and totally illegal decision. The ship was the Luteil, and it belonged to the French East India Company. It set sail from France with 142 men, heading for Mauritius, a French colony. But it made an unauthorized stop in Madagascar, and that decision would seal its fate. It would never, ever reach its destination. And the reason for that stop? Pure greed. You see, the governor of Mauritius had put a temporary ban on the slave trade because of the war. But Captain Lafarge, he saw a chance to make a massive profit. He illegally bought 160 Malagasy men, women, and children and crammed them into the ship's cargo hold to sell them as slaves. Now, Lafargue was desperate to offload his human cargo before anyone found out. So he was sailing at full speed, at night, and he hit a snag. He had two different maps. One showed a clear, safe passage. The other, it showed deadly coral reefs right in his path. He decided to gamble, and he lost. The Luteil smashed right into the reef of an island then known as Île des Sables, the island of sand. But the shipwreck, as horrifying as it was only the beginning. What happened next on that island is a story of survival, yeah, but it's one that started with an act of shocking cruelty and a promise that was never, ever meant to be kept. In all that chaos, about 20 of the French crewmen drowned. And the Malagasy captives? They were trapped, locked in the cargo hold as the ship went down. Incredibly, the hull broke apart, which allowed many of them to escape. In the end, just over 200 people washed ashore, alive but stranded. You had about 122 French sailors and around 80 Malagasy people. But even in a life or death situation, the ship's brutal hierarchy continued. The French crew immediately set up their own camp and hoarded all the fresh water they'd salvaged. The Malagasy survivors, they were given nothing, absolutely nothing. And as a direct result, 20 of them, a third of their remaining group, died of dehydration in just the first few days. That left only 60. Eventually, things settled a little. They managed to dig a well, and a new leader, First Officer Barthélemy Castellan du Vernet, took over. For 2 long months, both groups actually worked together, building a smaller boat from the wreckage of the Luteil. They named it the Providence. And the Malagasy people were crucial. They did the hardest physical labor that made this escape even possible. But when the boat was finally done, the betrayal was laid bare. It was declared too small for everyone. So all 122 French crewmen got on board the Providence, and they left all 60 Malagasy men, women, and children behind on that desolate island with a single hollow promise. So what happened next is really 2 stories running at the same time. You've got the story of the first officer, Barthélemy, a man apparently haunted by his conscience, fighting against a stubborn system to try and mount a rescue. And then you have the other story, the story of the 60 abandoned souls who simply refused to die. And to his credit, it seems Bartholomew really did try to keep his promise. He begged the governor of Mauritius for a rescue ship, but he was refused. The governor wasn't going to risk another expensive vessel during the war. Bartholomew even vowed not to go home, taking a job on a supply ship. He almost made it back to the island once, but a British naval ship turned him away. After a year of failing, he went back to France, but he never gave up. He just kept writing letters, pleading with the authorities. Meanwhile, on the island, the castaways realized no one was coming for them, so they adapted. They organized, they dug a new well for fresh water, they hunted turtles and birds, and even built a community oven to cook their food. And to survive the cyclones that would just rip across the island, they built these incredible houses out of coral blocks, with walls 1.5 meters thick. They even figured out how to weave clothing from bird feathers. They didn't just survive, they built a whole new society from scratch. And this isn't just some story passed down through old records. In 2008, an archaeological survey of the island proved it. Researchers actually uncovered the remains of their coral houses, that community oven, and the very tools they made. It's real, tangible proof of their amazing resourcefulness. But life there was just brutal. After several years passed, a group of 18 castaways just couldn't take it anymore. They got desperate. They built a makeshift raft out of whatever wood they could find and set off into the open ocean, just hoping for a miracle. They were never seen or heard from again. Years just kept turning into more years. A decade passed. Hope must have felt like a distant, painful memory. But then, after 15 long years, the political situation changed. And a ship finally appeared on the horizon. So what finally broke the deadlock? Well, a bit of morbid luck, really. The original callous governor of Mauritius finally died. His replacement, probably aware of Bartholomew's endless letters, was a more compassionate man. He authorized a rescue mission. So on November 29, 1776, a ship called the Dauphin, commanded by Jacques-Marie de Tromelin, arrived at the island. But what those rescuers found was just devastating. Of the 60 souls who had been abandoned 15 years earlier, only a tiny handful were left. The years of storms, hardship, and isolation had taken an absolutely terrible toll. On the shore, waiting to meet the ship, were 7 women and 1 baby boy. He was just 8 months old, born into this impossible world. They were the last ones. They were taken to Mauritius, and the new governor declared them free citizens. And in a final tribute, the Île de Sable, the island of sand, was officially renamed Tromelin Island, in honor of the captain who, after 15 years, finally brought them home. The story of the Tromelin castaways is just this incredible testament to human endurance against all possible odds. But it also forces us to ask a really tough question. Their story only survived because of a few written records and modern archaeology. It really makes you wonder, how many other stories just like it, tales of incredible survival and profound injustice, have been completely washed away by the tides of time?